close it. It's yeah. I'm gonna take. I was just gonna drink.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah.
Camera is there. Stage is your. Do you need this?
But you can introduce him. Just say two sentences.
Also. Yeah.
Is this on?
Yes, it's fine. But do you want to use the mic?
Yeah, I can just use that. Test, test.
Hello, everyone. Okay, we are back live for second presentation, and then we will have again one small break, and then Mike will show us again the second part of his presentation. So now we are going to have mocking APIs using embedded web servers in Flutter apps. Stage is yours. Please introduce yourself. Let us
Thank
know
you.
where you're from and all of that.
Hello, I'm Eralp. I come from a company called Quick, and we do consultancy. Sometimes we make like React Native apps, Flutter apps, native apps, like all kinds of things. But this is about I was at a project and the backend wasn't ready yet, so we needed to come up with something to get going. And this is such a rare case where could mostly like happen in consultancies where you're there to build an app, but there isn't like enough resources, so you just need to like push through. This was such a case where I was the only like app developer, and then we didn't have a backend developer to develop the backend, so I needed some way of like going on. So I initially thought about like the side. I think did we? Yeah, it's I thought about making a web server on the side with Node.js or something, or I could figure out something else. For example, like hard coding the API responses into the app code, or I could use something like Mockito or something for like mocking the API responses in tests, but then how to get it to end user, how would end user see the responses like the UI, or I could just like, as I said, I could create a web server and run it like separately, or I had this other idea where I can just like put the web server into the Flutter app, which is I figured that Flutter has this HTTP API. I just want to try it. By the way, this is available as a blog post. So if you go to that like QR code or like eralt.dev, whatever is next to that, you can read this, copy paste the code. It's not that much code. But yeah, so the options I had pretty much like I could hard code the responses into the code and paint the UI, see like how it works. And I could mock using the tests, which allows me to develop the like API like request handling code, but not really the HTTP um, parts. And then like if I make the web server in Flutter, can it even work? But like I could also like make a separate web server, as I said. If you look at the options, like easiest thing to do is to just like hard code the API responses into the widgets and then just like paint the UI. Well, it's easy. App UI behaves as expected, and then everything can be done in the same code base, which is nice. You just like write Dart, and everything is in the same like project. Cons of this is that the code is not final, especially you don't have like serialization and then deserialization of the that part of the code. And then it's difficult to test like HTTP errors. What if like it responds with like 404 or something? And difficult to test like race conditions. What I mean by that is that like, what if a request like responds in a different order than you expect? Like, will it crash? What will happen? You can easily like, you should be like able to easily test this. And deserialization and serialization, like I said. Also, like working with mocks, pros are that like means that you actually write tests, which is super nice, and then you have the ability to test the HTTPers. It's easy to do with like something like like Mockito or something, and again, like you have the ability to test like serialization and deserialization, and mocks are in the same code base as the app. That's also nice. And cons of this is that doesn't work in end user UI. They are just like tests, and your end user won't run tests. Um, Also, like you need to run the tests to work with them. Also, you need to write and set up tests, which is again not too bad. And if you make a web server on the side with a different technology, with a different like project in Docker or something locally, just like run it on the side. Um, like then the pros are that like you have an actual web server, close as it gets to having a real API implementation. And the ability to test everything related to HTTP and REST, you can actually, that's a real web server. So like whatever goes with it, you have it. The ability to test HTTPers, like we talked, that here you have them. Ability to test JSON serialization and deserialization. You can actually complete your implementation on the Flutter side, which is like nice. And cons of that is that like, well, you need to create a web server and need to know how to do that. For example, if you use Node.js, you need to run it separately and need to figure out how to get the correct port related to emulator. For example, like your web server runs on whatever port, and then the Flutter app needs to know that port to talk to it. And what if the port changes? How do you like communicate it with your like Flutter app? And if you distribute a test app into your like internal testers, then you need to have the web server running somewhere on the internet, and you cannot like easily take it down because like you don't know when will they test, or like you need to also like pay for it. Like there's like lots of details that you need to care about after. So I had this other idea where I can put that web server into the app. So the app goes with the server itself in it and serves the API to itself. Like, can it even work? And pros of this is that like the server runs inside the app. So the Android app, whenever you launch it, it just like serves itself a web server from localhost. And well, you get the same language and in the project, and it's very easy to develop since it's inside the Flutter project, and there's lots of shared code. You can like even reuse your like serialization and deserialization code, so you can just like use the same stuff you have already. um, Cons of is that maybe the port would clash with some other app inside the like the phone or something. But then you can change the port. The port that you have is inside your like project, so you can change your like API handling code to use that same port. So you have like full control over it. You can even make like a logic that like follows through some like port numbers until it can like launch the server. Like there's like many ways to solve it. And the implementation of it is that it's based on Flutter's own HTTP server. I think they used the same thing for like Flutter web targets as well for development. And this is just like what package I used is that this is a like convenience wrapper around Flutter's HTTP server, which is like shelf. And I'm going to show like how it's implemented. This is just like wraps the web server, but to make it really like Express style, like Node.js style or Sinatra, Flask, whatever like backend technology, that kind of like routing, you get it with shelf router, which is, it really looks like apps routing system. And this is how it looks like. So um, we make a class called local mock API server. You put your like host and like port, and then also like the base URL, and you just like make a constructor, and then you initiate the shelf wrapper, you you get it to like serve the router you have, and that's it. Like it just like serves your API. I left out the request handler code here, which is like kind of implementation detail. I'm going to show them later. On line 16, you also put here a log processor if you want to. I'm going to show that also. And to use this in your like main class of Flutter, you just like after widgets Flutter binding ensure initialized, you just like wait for your class to start the server. It's just gonna run it in the background, and then you run the app. Whatever like Flutter stuff you have goes after this. So this is to ensure the web server starts before you start the app, and the UI gets painted and stuff. So, and this is what you see on the logs. So doing this will start the web server in the background. It says like web server starting and it's serving on this port, and then you can talk to it from the app, and the app serves once again like app serves the server to itself. By the way, like you might have guessed that this is not intended for production. You delete all of these code once you actually have an API. So the request handlers, remember that I left out these like 1 and 2 points in line 11 and 12. So here we have the implementation of first one. This is one of the API handlers. This, if you are familiar with like Express or something, it really looks similar. So you just say like app.get this path, and then like handle the request. And then I made myself, I'm going to show them later, this like response extension, which responds with like, okay, which means 200. And then just for testing, I return back the access token that I sent to the API back, so I can just like see it. Yeah, this extension is like parsing the access token, requested access token, and I'm going to show them later. But this is how you basically make a API request handler. And the request handler 2, for example, this handles like /inventory path of the API and just responds with a list of objects, like key value objects. And if you want, this is based on the extension, so you can give it some delay. So you can test like delayed responses also. And request handler 3, here we handle a post request, which is like simulation of an account creation, for example. And then there's another extension I made, which like parses the JSON value from the request that you send. And again, just for testing purposes, it's just like parses the token from the body, and then like returns as an ID, which doesn't make any sense at all, but just have a different ID every time you send a different token or something. You can like do like whatever you want here. This is like you can also send like hard-coded responses like here, or something dynamic that you need for like UI testing here also. And the logger, which is not too important, but it's just nice to see when the API handles some request and you can see what it does with it. You can extend it however you want. This is like the place 3 that I showed you here on line 16. Before you start the server, it goes there and logger. So whatever like logger you have, I have logger package from the pubdev, and you can log like if it's a error, then you log severe, it logs differently, whatever. You can just like implement your own logger here, anything goes. And the extensions I have, which is like I made body JSON value extension on request, so I can just like parse something from the JSON in the body from the request. Also access token from the request, that's another extension. Also, I made a response extension, which is like JSON mock response, which is used to respond with like JSON. I'm going to show them next. This is the request extension. So um, like body JSON value, which like just decodes the JSON, awaits and like reads it as a string and then like decodes it and just like picks the param you have, like whatever. And access token, it parses the header, gets the authorization header, splits it from the bearer, and takes the last part, which is used to just get the access token. And the response extension is this is like a JSON mock response extension on response. So it puts some delay there, and then you can configure it if you want. It like encodes the JSON and responds with like OK, which is like 200 once again, and just sets a header, which is content type application JSON, just to behave like a regular API, like nothing suspicious in the point of like your app. And this is pretty much it. Like how it works is that your phone serves an API to itself, which if you think of it doesn't make any sense for production, but like just like going forward in the very early phases of prototyping an app, it's very simple to set up and like saves a lot of time. This is just an idea I had. Of course, like let me know what you think about this. And like you can distribute to real users if you really want to, which is kind of silly, but like, and there's no security involved in this, like nothing really. Everybody can like connect to this API to your phone. They can like just be careful, just like don't distribute to like real users. The benefit of this is to develop the app without waiting for APIs to be ready. And also it's nice that like the API developers, you can share them this code and they can base their implementation on top of this, because the code really looks like every other like API server programming technology like Express, whatever. Um, and actually, I haven't tested this, but like you can make a web server with this. You can write the web server with Dart, and you can take this code, this prototype code you have, and deploy it in a, I don't know, via Docker or something to a server, and you can actually make the API with this if you really wanted to. But yeah, this is really this is it. Um, this is available as an article also, so you can just like copy paste code if you want to, and it's available here. It's myname.dev dev slash flutter dash mock dash API dash server. Also, you can use the QR code. As I said, I'm from Quick, cool company. Check it out. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very good one. Questions?
Yes.
Yeah, like it looks very practical and very good for creating new apps. But have you tried using it for like if you already have an existing app and like the backend is there and but you are just trying to implement a new feature that you don't have the API for it yet? Like how was this integration between like the current app that lives in the web and also that you have like this new URL or new endpoint that you need to add? Have you tried this?
I haven't had that case, but just an idea I thought, which is very valid case that you can use it to develop that also, like extending an existing API while it doesn't, that endpoint doesn't exist yet. What I would do in that situation, I would, in the router of this web server, you can relay the actual API. So you can set up the server in such way that you just implement the new endpoint, and whatever else just goes to the real API. So you just like pass through your own like fake API. Everything else than the new endpoint you are trying to implement can just like pass through, which I don't know how like cookies and session would work. You have to figure that out, but like, yeah. In short answer, no, but maybe.
Very interesting things.
Thank
Any other question? Okay, apparently not. So, thank you.
Thank you, Arap. Now, before the next talk, just quick gifts. So, Alessio, thank you very much, first of all, for driving this.
Thanks to you.